Welcome back to Radio Entrepreneurs. I'm Jonathan Freedman, and our next guest up is Nicos Vekiarides, CEO of Attestiv, Inc. Welcome to Radio Entrepreneurs.
Thanks for having me, Jonathan.
So tell our listeners a little bit about Attestiv and what it is that you do.
So we provide authenticity for digital media, so photos, videos, and documents, particularly for companies that use digital media to make business decisions. What we can provide is a way to make them tamper-proof and tamper-resistant, and also determine if they've been altered in any way. So you may have heard about deep fakes. It's relatively easy to alter digital media. And when it comes time to make business decisions on the digital media, what we can do is we can provide that layer of defense that enables companies to have confidence that what they're receiving is real.
So give us an example of an application whereby this would play out very often in an engineering setting where you're talking about drawings, or are we talking about commercial objects that are changing hands just to ensure that the authenticity is there prior to, I guess, wiring money essentially and concluding a transaction, correct?
Yeah, very much so. Where we focus on is think of photos and videos. So insurance is an industry that uses photos to make virtually all of their decisions, right? If you file a claim, there's photos that go in, those are used to make the decision. If somehow those photos are tampered or altered in any way, and it's very easy. It's really child's play for anybody to get a hold of Photoshop and start altering them. But lately, we've seen tools such as deepfakes that utilize AI and really can create very realistic fakes. And while we're seeing a lot of those on social media, they're starting to permeate the enterprise, and that's really where we come in, is to help really prevent that.
So, we're in a world, and I don't think a day has gone by in the last several years where we're not talking about ransomware and companies being held hostage. It seems to be so pervasive in our digital environment. Tell us about how you guys work in that space and help to prevent it by your authenticity and ensuring that things are as they seem.
Yeah, it's kind of a similar, I call it a parallel space, but in both cases, and you hear a lot about ransomware today. And in all cases, what's happening is you have hackers who are out there to exploit the system and try to make money, right? Even though a lot of it sounds extremely dangerous and also frightening in many aspects. On the other side, someone is trying to exploit the system and make money, and that's really the business that we're in, is to stop this type of exploitation of security holes. So if an insurance company, for instance, doesn't have this type of protection, they're open to being defrauded. And like the case of ransomware, it's not only maybe you're losing access to a critical resource, but also it's reputational as well. So where we come in is we make it so that you can validate all of your data. So you know something has changed. You know if anything has been altered. You understand that data maintains its integrity.
Is this just an example of something that has always been there and it's just moved into the digital domain because we're so much more dependent on the digital world? It seems to me that no matter, if you look back over time in commercialization, it's always been stay one step ahead of the criminal, so to speak. But it seems so pervasive today. And is it just because there's so much of it out there, or is it because it's a lucrative field for the hackers? What is sort of driving all this, or is there just so much more vulnerability because almost all business is conducted electronically today?
I think that's really it. Is digital transformation has been slowly happening over the last 15, 20 years. But as things, there was a big shift into the cloud. A lot of things are online, and of course it can be as secure as an on-premise environment, but oftentimes If you neglect to take the proper security measures, then it becomes vulnerable. And that's simply a case of a lot of companies moving to digital transformation, but perhaps not taking the right steps to protect their organization. So really the protection has to go hand in hand with the digital transformation. And that's really where we come in, is we provide that foundation where we can help protect your data.
So why do you think that companies are slow to adopt, or industries are slow to adopt? Is it a classic case of, you know, if I don't think about it, it doesn't exist? I've seen in some particular cases in the hospital industry, maybe a small example, but you know, where access to records, patient records, things of that nature are compromised. You hear every day, and I'd be surprised if any consumer who hasn't gotten something from some company, whether it be a credit card merchant or a company that they've transacted with, that has been somehow violated, you know, their records in some respect. But it seems to me that in the cases that I've heard of, companies are investing millions and millions of dollars to try and protect these things. But I suspect that industries as a whole are generally slow to adopt the necessary protections. And why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's hard to change processes, and in particular, if you haven't been hurt by this type of breach, then it's very easy to have different priorities. So it's really a matter of making it a priority. So it kind of has to start from the top down to say, well, cybersecurity is going to be a very high priority for us. And we did some surveys earlier this year, and what we saw is that 80% or close to 80% of companies acknowledge the threat of fake media and deep fakes and the potential for fraud in their organization. But less than 30% are doing something about it. So I think it's a situation, well, where until something bad really happens, and perhaps as part of an industry, then that industry really starts to take action. Ideally, it should be proactive, but it's often hard for people to change their existing processes and make that a part of their process.
So let me try and understand in the insurance industry, and I guess maybe I'm looking at it with a myopic view towards a consumer. You know, as you said, I have a car accident, I upload photos and send them to the insurance adjuster, the insurance company. And is it happening at the consumer level where people are conducting the fraud, or is it happening in a much more sort of global sense, whereby there are hackers who are somehow inserting themselves into the process? What's going on there? Is it a large scale, or is it individualized, or both?
It's really a combination of both. Sometimes you have sort of you know, fraud rings where they sort of come in and sort of find sort of a place to attack. But on the other hand, yeah, I mean, it's even from a point of view of if a hurricane hits and it's very difficult for an insurance adjuster to get in there, or if during COVID, right, we saw that perhaps you don't want to send inspectors and adjusters, so a lot of insurers revert to self-service. So self-service means a level of trust. Sometimes it's simply the wrong location. Sometimes it's pretty brazen attempts. People just download photos from the internet and say, "Oh, this is my vehicle because it looks like my vehicle," or even photos of photos, right? So we track time, date, location. Someone can take a photo of their screen and say, "Well, this is a photo of my damage." But a lot of fraud happens. If you look at the records, you know, hurricanes, things like that, are typical situations where fraudsters come in many forms, and they try to make false claims.
Do you have estimates of what the scale of that fraud in the insurance industry is? I would imagine it's in the hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars every year.
It is. If we look at the P&C, property and casualty industry alone, it's about 40 billion in the US. Of course, it's not all photo
Annually.
and media fraud.
Annually
That's
40.
correct.
Wow. So I can
Yeah,
see how the
it's a very
insurance
big
industry.
number.
Wow, that is a tremendous number. I imagine if they spent a small fraction protecting themselves with a service like you, they'd be well ahead of the game.
It's very easy to work out an ROI, and they are, and then the question is, how can you integrate this into your existing process? And that's where we've done a lot of work lately, is making it easy to adopt. So we even work with products that insurance carriers are already using, or even companies who they use as claims providers. So we recently announced we're working with ACD, who's a third-party administrator for auto claims. So insurance companies that use ACD essentially get the Attestiv capabilities as part of the service.
And without giving away too much of the mousetrap, what you're really doing is not necessarily authenticating. You're authenticating the digital behind the scenes, not the actual physical picture, but the characteristics, the digital characteristics to, when it was shot, when it was taken, location, those types of activities, without giving away too much. So you're not experts in a piece of art, but you're looking at the digital characteristics of that image.
That's correct. And we do work with partners on things like damage identification so that we can add that. It makes sense once you validate the photos that you can also use artificial intelligence to kind of assess the scope of the damage and things like that. So where we come in is really that really first level is just to make sure that you're starting with good photos, videos, even documents. There's a lot of document fraud, but that's the foundation of being able to process the claims, and then adding automation to these claims. It's necessary to know that you start with good data.
Really fascinating stuff, and it sounds like you're really in the midst of potential tremendous growth for your business. And obviously, it just blows my mind from a consumer perspective how much of this I hear, and how many emails I get at least on a weekly basis somehow, that I've been compromised in some way or shape or form. So we know that the hackers are out there working hard all over the place. Nicos Vekiarides, CEO of Attestiv. If people want to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to touch base? What's the best way to connect and learn more about your business?
You can learn about our business by emailing us at info@attestiv.com or www.attestiv.com. And of course, if anyone wants to reach out to me on LinkedIn, I'm pretty active there.
Excellent. Our guest has been Nicos Vekiarides, CEO of Attestiv, and thank you for coming on Radio Entrepreneurs.
Thank you, Jonathan.
And we'll be right back with another segment on Radio Entrepreneurs.